The Botswana Meat Commission has played an important part in the development of Botswana. Therefore, it is understandable that the series of unfortunate events reported at the BMC in recent years has struck close to home for most Botswana. Find out the truth behind the media storm, the anger and the speculation from the man who actually seems to be turning things around. We also get some insight into who international speaker and regular guest on First Issues, Renee Carayol, is. The Botswana Meat Commission, known simply as the BMC, was established on the 24th of December 1965 by an Act of Parliament. And given the date, it could quite possibly have been perceived as a Christmas present to all Botswana, considering that cattle rearing is such an intrinsic part of our social and economic fabric. Despite the tides of urbanization and modernization, many Botswana own cattle either as their main source of income or a kind of traditional supplementary income or retirement plan. In recent times, the Commission has made headlines for reported acts of fraud, conspiracy, self-serving board members, product recalls, mismanagement, and severe financial losses spanning several years. The media storm has resulted in both farmers and consumers losing faith in the Commission, and a lot of speculation as to the real goings-on at the BMC. An erosion of trust that has even seen a growing call for BMC to end its monopoly and for farmers to sell to who they want, how they want. You have done well by joining us this evening, as over the next few weeks we uncover the strategies put in place by the acting CEO of the BMC that have resulted in positive returns for the Commission for the first time since 2007. In our first installment, Dr. Akolang Tombale addresses the issues still fresh on everyone's mind. Questions as to what went wrong at the BMC, to liberalize the beef industry or not, and of course, where to from here. Welcome to First Issues. There are a myriad of opinions as to what went wrong at the Commission, but we were fortunate to get from the horse's mouth the exact situation at the BMC when Dr. Tombale arrived to head the institution in 2012.
Maybe I should just start by saying Ghana BMC is a cooperative for farmers. And every Botswana, as long as BMC is not functioning, has its own idea or how should we rectify it. But going back to your question, there were a number of issues that were not in order. First, I think the marketing of meat products was not being done properly. The reason for saying that is that we were producing meat products, sending them to Europe, and then we wait there for people to call looking for meat products. We're not marketing. I think marketing means that you know your customers before you start. You produce your products focusing on the customers themselves. So that we are not doing. Be that it may, the cattle prices also, because we are not marketing, we are not producing enough money to pay for cattle, but the cattle farmers wanted to be paid better prices. I think around 2006 they put pressure on both the BMC, the ministry and government, saying that at least they should be paid around what they call the export parity price, which is similar to prices in South Africa. And that was granted. Now you can imagine buying cattle at higher price and then selling at lower price, so there was that mismatch. Over and that above, in 2011, the EU, I think in 2009 first, did make what their annual audit and found a number of issues. First, it was related to the bolus issue or the lead system, that the database was not good enough for them to be able to be comfortable with the products because the issue is that you are supposed to be able to trace the meat product from the farm to the fork, but the database was not good enough for them to make that comfort. So that was an issue. The second issue, as the plant itself, there were a number of issues that they felt needed to have been rectified. So by 2011, I think the government, realizing that there was that problem, decided to delist BMC from supplying EU in order to rectify those issues. So we are producing meat products, paying high prices, but we are not selling to the highest market that we can realize better prices.
Clearly, the acting CEO walked into a quagmire of fundamental issues. He goes on to detail how even in attempting to address the issue of poorly managed cattle tracing systems, the BMC made things worse by taking on all the financial risk when trying to finance feedlots.
The other issue, I think, is that by 2006, 2005, because of the changes in the lead system, what happened was that if you look at the farming situation in Botswana, you have 90% of the cattle in cattle post, or what is called communal areas, and only about 10% more the farms. But even the farms themselves, that 10%, only a few of those would be regarded as they can be supplying the EU. So BMC, in trying to deal with that situation, they decided to produce what we call feedlots, where we take cattle and put them in those structures for 40, 90 days in order to develop enough database so that the meat products from those areas, the EU. If you do that, then unfortunately we made mistakes. We acted as banks, so we funded the development of this from the BMC coffers, and we took all the risk. The farmers that were using to develop those feedlots did not have any risk. So when 2011 came, we had all these expenses, so they ballooned more than we could manage them.
What quick wins did you implement then at that time?
They were not that quick because basically it was to reform the situation. First, I think, to realize that BMC is not a bank. We are just a company that are able to slaughter cattle and market meat products. So we had to change the funding of the feedlots. Secondly, the first thing, I think one of those was just to say that we need to market meat products. And we looked around and looking at our neighbors, especially around the west, Namibia, they were doing better than ourselves, although they were selling the same market. And we realized that they were using a company called GPS, or Global Protein Solutions. It's a British company. And when we compared ourselves with Namibia, in the European market, we think that we are very minuscule. So we thought that we are not competing with Namibia. So we decided to take that company to help us market those meat products. And I can tell you that 2013, maybe just backtrack and say 2012, we slaughtered around 180,000 cattle, using 2 plants to send meat products to Europe. And the realization at that time was 1 billion. In 2013, we had lost Francistown. It was delisted. We were only operating with this, with Lovatsa. We ended up the same way. We arrived or achieved 1 billion Pula sales with less cattle. You could see that we marketing better, although because of the loss in Francistown, we had problems in South Africa. We had to channel some of the meat products to South Africa, although at the time when the rand was depreciating against the Pula. But despite all of that, I think we performed much better than the years that relating to.
There's now talk of a new strategy. Can you explain to us the pillars of this strategy and whether there will be real benefits for the farmer who you just said is your biggest?
Yes, I think there will be. We have a 2-year strategy starting this year. It's based basically, as I said, that we realize that we are a cooperative for farmers. I keep referring to cooperative for farmers. Maybe I need to explain that. If we look at BMC Act, it says that our role is to buy cattle from the farmers, prepare them, slaughter them, prepare them, and sell meat products. If we make surplus after taking all of the cost, we are supposed to pay back to the farmer. In other words, we are not supposed to make profit. If we make surplus, we pay back to the farmers. In the past, they used to do that. Many people still remember, or there used to be what's called bonus. Bonus basically was the surplus that we are generating, and for a long time we have not been able to do that. So we realized that. So the strategy is really based on recognizing the farmer as the pillar of our operation. There are several issues that we are looking at. The first thing is the marketing that are related to. We have to produce a product that is acceptable worldwide. In other words, we have to be the best producer of the product, meat product. So our marketing has to be top notch. So that's one of the key performance areas is marketing. The second part is the cattle themselves. Currently, as I said, more of the cattle are in the communal area, and technically speaking, they are not compliant with EU. So that's why we buy them and put them in the feedlots. So we need to be able, or we are intending to partner with the communities. If you go around the country, land boards have allocated some farms to communities, and these farms are either they have not been developed or they have been not have been used. So we wish to partner with the farmers and develop these facilities and take cattle from them together with the farmers and put them in these facilities, because our view is that if we can get the production from our plants, 60% of that production being going to the highest market, which is Europe, then we'll be out of the woods. So basically, to use the facilities that raise the products there. So procurement, including the initiatives taken is the second pillar of the strategy.
Welcome back to First Issues as we have a brief chit-chat with one of our favorite recurring guests on the show, the UK's own authentic business guru and speaker, Renee Carriol. As a regular authority on the show on matters of business transformation, leadership and culture, we just had to find out who the real man behind the name is.
So I'm a Brit, live in London. I was born in Gambia. My father was a Gambian diplomat who went to London far too many years ago and took the family with him. I'm the son of immigrants in London. And with the time that my parents went to London, London was a tough old place. For people of colour, it wasn't the easiest place in the world. So I grew up in a place and not in the best housing, didn't go to the best school, didn't have the best opportunities, but I had fabulous parents. And my parents had sacrificed themselves to give me and my brothers and sisters a chance. Now, me understanding that they'd given us a chance, I've been as hungry, as ravenous as you can ever get from the day I started school till the day I ended my corporate career. And I remember on my first day at school, I was getting ready to go. I was so excited. My mum said to me, Rene, you just remember, you be twice as good as those white boys at school. I didn't know what she meant. It didn't really mean that much to me. I just wanted to get to school. But it was ringing in my ears, and as I'm sure that all of us, the children of the foreigners who'd come over, their parents were saying exactly the same thing. Be they African or Caribbean, they're saying the same thing. You be twice as good as that white boy at school. I got to school, couldn't wait, got into the classroom. We grew up in one of the most difficult parts of London. 80% of where I grew up was non-white. I turned up at school, got into the classroom, the teacher said, get your books out, getting our books out, getting ready, getting excited. And just at that moment, I remember what Mum said. You be twice as good as those white boys at school. I looked around the classroom. There were no white boys in the classroom. And I learnt a big lesson then. My well-intentioned mother was in danger of giving me an inferiority complex. It was nothing to do with the white boys at school. It was everything to do with me. How much did I want it? Who did I want to be? How ambitious was I? What sacrifices was I prepared to make? Did I really want to go to the top? Or would I find some excuses why I couldn't succeed? I never wanted to say to my kids, you be twice as good as those white kids in school. So I've tried really hard, I've pushed really hard, and I've been lucky enough to have relative success in my career. And I was lucky enough that by the time I got onto I was 10 years at Marks & Spencer, 3 years on the board at Pepsi, and 5.5 years on the board of IPC Media. And I was lucky enough to be one of the youngest directors in the UK and the first black director in the UK. And I was lucky enough that in 2004, the Queen offered me an MBE for services to business, which is really lucky. And I was part of the team on the board of IPC Media. We were the largest consumer magazines business in Europe. 10 of us did a management buyout for £860 million, and it's still the largest management buyout in Europe today. 3 years later, we sold the business to AOL Time Warner for £1.1 billion. 10 of us on the board owned 1% of the business each, and at that stage, I retired from corporate life. But I retired for all of 2 weeks, and then took up a professorship. And now I'm lucky enough, I've spent the last 12 years going around the world, speaking, writing, talking, learning all about leadership and culture. And I didn't realise what that would give me. By seeing 80 different organisations a year, each having to share with me what are their opportunities or what are their issues, what are their challenges, at any given moment I've got a very contemporaneous view on what separates the winners from the losers. And in our world today, it's changing so quickly. So I still get the time to do I present some documentaries for the BBC. I work on business programs for them, and I write for the Sunday Telegraph in the UK. And you know what they say, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. I'm just about as busy as it gets. I firmly believe that if you do a job that you love, you never work a day in your life. And I'm so lucky I do a job that I'm passionate about and I really love. I meet far too many people who say, I really don't enjoy what I'm doing. Well, you've got a choice. And the trick, I think, is to be really brutally honest about the 2 or 3 things you do really well. Don't focus so much on your weaknesses. Everyone's got weaknesses. Spend your time making your strengths spikes. When I was at Pepsi, we used to say, what's your spike? And what the chief executive meant by what was your spike is what's your standout strength? If you know what your 2 or 3 standout strengths are, build your future career around your strengths. Don't try and be all things to all people. Do 2 or 3 things brilliantly and stick to those. I've been doing that for the last 12 years, and as I say, I even find sleep is wasting my time. I'm so excited about what I do, so passionate about what I do, that it doesn't feel like work.
Where do you think your passion for leadership really comes from, though?
I was lucky enough to work for some of the most fantastic leaders in the UK. Seeing what difference they could make to people's lives, seeing how they could energise an organisation. And I suppose the final thing for leadership for me was I've been lucky enough to live through the generation that had Nelson Mandela, our recently departed leader. And in 2004, I was lucky enough to be invited to the reopening of the British Museum, where BP were launching a lecture theatre, the BP Lecture Theatre. And they invited 200 guests, and the guest speaker was Nelson Mandela. And the bit I'll never forget is we were told to get there an hour beforehand. And it's London, we're decadent. No one gets there on time, everyone turns up when they want to. Everybody was in there 2 hours beforehand. I went with my best friend, who owes me forever, having invited him to audience with Nelson Mandela. And just before proceedings started, we're sitting there quietly, 200 of us. And I'm sitting next to my friend Ray, and I'm saying, Ray, why is everyone whispering? He said, I don't know. Everyone in the auditorium was whispering. Was later to understand after he spoke, we're in the presence of greatness. And I think, to me, if there's he's left us a legacy. And it's a legacy of everyone on the planet, but even more so for those of us who are African. He's shown us what real leadership can do. And what it can do is do the things that other people said could not be done. He was able to energize a nation into changing its stance on civil rights. To energize a nation. When everyone else said that it couldn't be done, he delivered the dream of the Rainbow Nation. Every single one of us needs to hold up that legacy, and the legacy is inspirational leadership.
It is now time for the stock market review, courtesy of the Botswana Stock Exchange.
The DCI ended the week 0.68% down, while the FCI was 0.02% down. The turnover recorded last week was 24.7 million pula. This translates to an average daily turnover of 4.9 million pula. On a year-to-date basis, the DCI was up 1.28% this year. This is less than the 5.72% recorded in 2013. The FCI, however, was 0.02% down this year, compared to the 0.98% decline in 2013. The turnover recorded this year was 267.3 million. This translates to an average daily turnover of 6.5 million. The number of shares that traded was 63.5 million. In 2013, the total turnover recorded for the same period was 157.5 million. This translates to a 3.8 million average daily turnover.